Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Four Mortal Coils podcast. Today, I am joined by my friend Steven and my friend Trevor. I am Bray. We are unfortunately not graced by the presence of our other friend Tanner this evening, but we hope you'll stick around with us and imagine some of his great quips alongside the commentary that we will give you today. As we delve into the topic of free speech. And Trevor, would you grace me with the exact? I think we had it in a question format.
Ooh, I gotcha. Yeah, in the form of a question, it was: should there be any limitations on free speech?
Perfect. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. And I've got a few different angles to go at that with. Now, don't forget before we get started here that you can voice your opinion down in the comments and let us know. We do read the comments.
All 10 of
And
them.
we are yeah, right. And we really do look forward to kind of seeing the interactions that we may generate by putting this content out available for everyone. So feel free. There was something else I was supposed to say.
You're not supposed to do anything. You're just here
Oh
for a
well,
good time.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'll move on then. Anyways, so yeah. Um, I'm just going to go dive into it. And I'll preface this with saying that I'm glad that we got around to this topic because, let's see, what was it? I can't remember the professor's name, but back in college, back in the college days.
No.
You old man.
Oh,
Ooh.
back in undergrad. One day in undergrad. ... No, I was taking a film class. One of the many classes that I was taking to distract myself from the overwhelming mathematics in the STEM field. And it was a film studies class, and at the very end of the class, we took a final, and one of the questions on the final was that exact question that we're talking about: should there be limitations on free speech? And at the time, now granted, you guys will know this, but people listening will not. At that time, I was incredibly politically driven. Not that I'm no longer that way today. I just have a little bit more of a relaxed mindset about it.
I think we all do. Right.
Mhm.
Right. You kind of have to have a little bit of, you have to have a humble mindset. But at the time, I was incredibly politically active. I was doing things on my campus, or this was may have been a little bit afterward. But regardless, politics was high on the mind. And at the same time, Alex Jones was very popular before the
Yeah.
lawsuits and all the downfall of
Right,
Alex
right, right,
Jones and all
right.
that. Um, and it was my opinion, writing on the final, that if there was any kind of limitations on free speech, I was like, I hope it comes crashing down upon people like Alex Jones, because disinformation was, and I think continues to be, one of the biggest things that just really irks that one corner of my mind. That's like, really wish I could just shut some of these people up. And I can say that about Alex Jones because he went on to demonstrate exactly what I was talking about by saying the things. If you're not familiar about the Sandy Hook victims, which has now cost him, I don't know how much money, but it has really, I think, damaged his career beyond repair. Although I think he's still making stuff, but not a show about Alex Jones. We're talking about our own show today. I just wanted to include that little free tidbit because it's kind of funny to see how things come back around. And hopefully we can expand on more than just my short little excerpt there way
Hmm.
back in the college days. So the first thing I want to do is go around here and we'll do a simple question. What is your opinion on free speech? Just kind of get us started. Something small, brief, and then we'll move on from there. And Stephen, you go first, and I'll end after Trevor.
Yeah. So, welcome, brothers and sisters. We have a good topic today, and I'm happy that Bray is hosting again for us. So, should I address the question, "What is my opinion on free speech," or should I address the topic question?
I think they can go hand in hand, or,
Yeah,
or
sure.
answer. Sure, yeah. Whichever fashion that you want to go in.
Yeah, so like, should there be limits on free speech? On my paper here, I I have that question, and then I have no, probably not. You know, I mean, like that.
Case
That's my
closed.
whole thesis. No, probably not mine.
Right.
You know, but uh, seriously, language is really 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 important to us, and if in society we have a person or a group of people whose ideas are not um, able to come out, whose ideas are stifled or put away forcibly, um, that's a bad idea. If society at large is trying to push away certain language, that's probably a really 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 big flag for you to say, oh, I probably need to go look into that. I actually need to go find out what that is, and see if I like it. see,
Right.
see if they're pushing away something that really shouldn't be. Is my point.
That's the don't think about elephants. What are you
Yeah.
thinking about?
hmm So my point is that free speech, it's one of the hallmarks of American society. In other parts of the world, they have the same realm of liberties that we do, but we're one of those few countries, um, not necessarily few. You get what I'm saying? We're one of those people who have free speech, and I believe it's one of those unambiguously good ideas.
Mhm. Mhm.
Cool. Trevor, go on ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So this is one of those moments. I usually like to take some sort of contrary position in most of our episodes. Not necessarily because I just am a contrarian or I think any argument can be made well, but that I have like genuine fears towards a lot of the assertions that I have. Like for example, like a lot of the time, whenever Stephen or Tanner will grace us with some sort of assertion or point that is very solid, I'll hear it, and I've voiced those opinions in my head before. And often, if I'm asked about so and so of a topic, I'll give that answer. But I can't help it. Also, share the fear, or the underlying daemon, if we're talking in the terms of Socrates, in my mind of that asserts the contrary position, and I follow through with that voice in my mind in a lot of these episodes. I often come to these episodes with my anxiety, I guess I could say. This
Your
is one of those
neuroses are
topics.
showing.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Like when I talk about how I can't fundamentally know anything, and I'm very vehement about the fact that I can't really grab a hold of anything, and it seems like no matter what I do, no matter what I grab a hold of, it seems that everything is meaningless, and I can't find myself, let alone anything. This is a fear I have. Truly, it's a very serious one. Uh, so, why did I bring this up? This is one of those topics, specifically, should there be limitations on free speech, that I really, I don't know if it's necessarily because I just never lend credence to the opposition, or if there really is something to be said about there is nothing good about limitations on free speech. But I really cannot find, for the life of me, reasons why restricting free speech would be a good idea. I just don't see it going well, for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it comes back to what I said just a second ago. I really don't know what I ought to be doing. I really, in a lot of ways, like I really don't know what's the right thing to do in a lot of circumstances.
Wing it,
And
brother.
what pole? Yeah, what position or pole do I pivot and choose from whenever I do say something is good or bad? Because whenever I say something is good or I say it is bad, it's in relationship to something. Everything is good for something in relationship to something else, something we've talked about before. So I can't tell you exactly whether or not something is objectively good or bad. All of these things we talked about them before, but the reason why I bring all this up, I really cannot tell you what you can and cannot say because I don't necessarily know what it is you're trying to do, what you're trying to get at. Where are you headed towards with this statement of what is or whatever? What right do I have to tell you what you can and can't say? I don't know what to say often enough. I have I can't see a world where I choosing, as strange as it sounds, even the world where I personally can perfectly choose what you a listener can say and not say. Like if you just give me a list and I were to construct and scaffold for you a world where I chose, as beautiful as that sounds to the young freshman college student, the ability to control everything for a day, and I would fix everything. I'm telling you, if I had that power, the world would get worse. The world would get way worse. It would unquestionably worse. There's so much I don't know. There's so much I don't know. I mean, there's the naivete.
How can you know the struggle of a rice farmer in Asia?
That's right. And as strange as it sounds, not as strange as it sounds, it's quite obvious. How little I know about you, Stephen. How little I know about you.
Well, we're more alike than we're different, but those differences are still vast.
It's this huge depth of a leap of. I know we often talk shit about the word faith, but the amount of a leap of faith to say that I know you in that sort of way. There's so much to you.
A leap of reasonable expectations.
Oh, sure.
Right.
but yeah. But if we talk about this, that's in the game of comparing against rice farmers. But if you just want to look at, okay, what are the differences? And like you look for the residual error between my understanding of you and you, that sort of thing. And like the amount of my expectations falling short, you'll never reach zero. You'll never actually fully encapsulate someone else's being. And just like that, I can't say that I know you. And just like that, following from there, I can't say that I can say what's good for you or what's good for your way of visualizing reality. I can't begin to say how strange an idea it is to me that we ought to restrict free speech. I just don't see it, unless we could find, like, Google one on the internet or find someone somewhere to offer that assertion. I'm afraid I just can't think of a reason why that would not come to a very horrible end, or at the very least finish itself, and then we would move on with our free speech, now knowing that that was a bad idea.
You know what this reminds me of a little bit? Well, Bray's on the computer for a moment here. I hate to bring up C.S. Lewis, but it's a cool little idea he had. In The Magician's Nephew, the first book of the Chronicles of Narnia, they go and find Jadis, who will eventually become the Ice Queen, the Witch Queen or whatever. And she's guilty in her world of saying a word so deplorable that it destroyed her world, And so that's an ultimate question we could always ask, and what I'm trying to say is this is not where we should go with this. We're not talking about language as in French, Japanese, English. We're not talking about sounds that come out of our mouth. We're talking about ideas, This is how we communicate ideas. This is how our species has come to literally throw information across time. We read books, we learn from the dead all the time, and if any one of them were silenced, I believe it was a crime. But I know Bray wants to get back to misinfo, and I want to get back to misinfo for sure.
Well, all that being said, too, justice for High King Torrig. But anyway, so where I want to go from here, I'm going to tell you my opinion, and then we're going to go into some of these different avenues here. My opinion on free speech is that I think that it is in everyone's best interest that whomever, wherever they might be, as a person, location, whatever, it is in their best interest to be able to say pretty much whatever they want without cause for concern or punishment or something of that nature. Funny enough, we were talking about consciousness and things like that, and one of the things that we've developed, or I'll say advanced beyond what is imaginable, yet still so limited, is our use of language and the expressions and the many different avenues in which we've taken language to its limits. And yet, one of the greatest hallmarks of yeah, one of the greatest hallmarks of human achievement, and suddenly we're like, you know what? Maybe we should dial that back a little bit.
Yeah.
But all that being said, I think there are some cases in which we may want to take a second look. A popular phrase that goes around is, free speech isn't the same thing, or like freedom of speech isn't freedom from consequences. Uh, in that, and then that takes many different forms as well, such as government consequences or your social consequences, workplace consequences, which is a very big deal. And I'm hoping that we can talk a little bit about that, and sort of, what really is justified, perhaps what really is appropriate, if applicable.
Okay,
Um,
so Bray, you're trying to say we should move this from a political sphere to an ethical sphere. Would that be
well,
appropriate?
well, I'm guilty of saying before that those are really the same thing.
True, ethics is on a wide scale politics. You're right about
Yeah,
that.
it is at its core an ethical concern, and let's just go straight into that for clarity, perhaps. Hate speech, big thing, big deal. I don't think I have to sort of dance around examples to get you to understand what I mean by hate speech, and I wouldn't. I think we can all agree that spiteful things towards minorities or particulars are very displeasant. I don't think anybody would enjoy being called a slur or any sort of derogatory term of that carries a greater weight than perhaps just calling somebody a bumbling idiot on the street. Um, we do have hate speech protections in the United States. Now, don't ask me chapter and verse on that because I'm not going to be able to tell you that. I just do know that they exist and that you can be uh, adversely affected by saying certain things.
So the question logically becomes, Bray, like, should we have hate speech legislation in this
Right,
country?
right, and based on our principles, if we're running all three of us from an avenue of it's probably better that people should be allowed to say whatever they want. And then we look at an example of, well, now we've got someone saying XYZ, or let's start small and then work up big. How about that? We've got numerous isolated incidents of students at local elementary, middle, high schools. I'm going to go with examples that I'm familiar with living in the South. We've got multiple examples of students being called racial slurs at school. Isolated incidents here and there. We've got people bullying, et cetera, et cetera. What's going to be done about this? This is hate speech. And one might say that should that be allowed? Should somebody just be able to say whatever they want to another student? And even if it's not even constant, like what if it's something in passing that's just whispered or even just kind of pestered at somebody walking in the hallway? It's not something that may qualify huge concern to some administrative officials or something. Maybe there's some wiggle room there for whatever, but let's take it up a few notches. Let's say we've got organizations of people who are actively, working however they may to sort of harass people or spread information like this that is derogatory and demeaning and takes a certain group of individuals and seeks to make them inhuman or beneath everyone else or something of that nature.
Subhuman. Yeah.
Right.
Dehumanized.
We know where that sort of behavior and language has led to in the past. Would it be best to stomp it out early, or do we say, well, this would violate our sort of principles regarding language and its use, and they should be able to say whatever they want, um, and so forth.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe it's the very real case that we have the answer from another like angle. Um, I've said this many times, maybe even on this podcast once or twice. The farther away a government body is from me, the less authority it should have in my daily life.
Mm-hmm.
So, what if we treat a job place or a school or some other really small community organization like the closest level of like social contract to us? Does that make sense to you both?
Right. Yeah, I got what you're saying.
Certainly.
So, in other words, we will see people every day, and we need to make sure that we know which words are not okay and which ones are, you know? And then after that, a level above that, say a local government, you know, even just that far, I would say that they shouldn't have any ability to talk about what words I use. But certainly, if you were in a job place and you couldn't stop yourself from saying racial slurs, you need to be fired. You need to be shot. Like, you know, I mean, you know, that goes without saying. I said in my classroom the other day, racist people deserve to die, and I meant it. You know, so, you know, that's not what I'm saying. Like, if for some reason you just can't contain yourself with some slur or other at work, yeah, you probably need to be fired. And
right, we can't convict anyone of thought crime, but it's like
Exactly.
you can control what you say.
Yeah, in other words, a place of business should have the ability to say, well, you know, this is my business, and you can't say those words ever.
Certainly.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
in other words, we're not going to convict you of a crime. We're just going to say you can't get money from us anymore. You know,
Mm-hmm.
or do
Mhm.
business
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Whenever I think of this sort of thing, it's like we have like certain ideals, and this is like the instrumentation or like implementation of trying to get those ideals, or at the very least, like the complete antithesis of those ideals out and prevent them from occurring within like the atmosphere or like around us, whether it be in our local like small businesses or like if you work on like a work your way up and up and up. That's what I think of whenever I think of this. Why did I bring that up? It seems to me that it's really hard to get into the nitty gritty of how to implement something like preventing of hate speech, because it really does get very, very nitty gritty. Like it really does. Like we want to talk about like, well, like in a local like business, like this guy keeps on saying the X word. That's not even a word. But
There
I'm
you
just
go.
making something up.
Sure.
Yeah, it goes with the 7 word.
Xylophone, xylophone, xylophone.
You just get banned immediately.
Right.
All 3 of us. Yeah, like it's really hard to talk about it because like I don't. There's 100 ways to skin a cat, and all 100 ways are being implemented this way and that way all across the United States. It's really hard to talk about this because it really does go in a billion different ways, and like it's just played off of in many different ways, all over the place. And I think it really just comes right back down to what Bray said at the very beginning. It's just you don't have freedom from consequences. I think that's what all this will
Right.
come down to. Like if I say
But
if
you
I
do
say the
have
X
freedom
word,
from government consequences.
well,
you know?
kind of, in this sort of way, and this is why it's so nitty gritty and so complicated. Let's say you work at a like a carpentry business where you go around you know, or let's do something more basic. You're a bricklayer. That's what you do. You lay bricks. You're quite good at it.
Carpenters
That's
and
what you do.
bricklayers are working at the same exact level of intelligence, I promise you.
Fair enough. Okay.
I've worked with both. and by the way, for those of us listening, that was not me demeaning carpenters and bricklayers. Like they're actually quite intelligent people most of the time. They're
Right,
just
right,
humans.
Like yeah. Well, the reason why I brought it up is, you work in that sort of business, and let's say you go around using the X word here, and there. Well, let's say
Calling people
somebody,
xylophones.
yeah, you call them people
Exactly.
xylophones. They're a son of a bitch kind of a thing to do.
Can I
And
just say,
eventually
too,
somebody,
I don't mean to interrupt you again, Trevor, but I
please,
just want to
what you got?
acknowledge that I feel like anytime somebody has to come up with a word that starts with X, it's just almost inevitably xylophone.
It is. It
Like,
is.
we've really
I
got to
I
get some
came up with
more.
Xander first, but that's
Oh, yeah.
that's my brother's name.
We need more
Ah,
press for words that begin with X that are
Yeah.
not xylophone.
maybe that letter should just end. I don't know.
Anyways,
But
Xanax, that's the new one we're going to
yeah,
go
call
with.
somebody a Xanax. Yeah, you need to chill out, buddy. You
No,
need a
no,
Xanax.
go back to xylophone. That was
Yeah, that's better. You go around calling people xylophone like a real son of a bitch. Somebody does something like that, and
you
somebody
bastard
who works.
xylophone. I mean,
Yeah, what happens is like in this theoretical environment, you work in like a private business that's a bricklaying company, and you go over and you tell like some sort of equivalent to an HR department that you don't like the way that you're treated, or you tell management if this is a real small business, there's no HR department, it's just management. If you tell management completely drops the
just the
ball in
owner of the
order to
company.
do anything. Yeah, it's just the what'd you say?
It's just the owner of the company. I promise.
Yeah, just the owner of the company. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Just like the private contractor who runs the thing and owns the truck. That dude. The dude who owns the truck, you tell him, and he does nothing about it. Well, whenever we're talking about like the dispersal of things like loans, like public loans from like a local government, I feel like those sorts of things kind of influence the state of affairs. That is to say, like if we're going around picking whoever gets this loan or this or that, if you're well known for being a piece of shit company, not only do you not get that, but also a whole bunch of other myriad things, such as like poor ranking, poor treatment, like just overall, it's not treated as well as a company that doesn't do that. I feel that you are worse off in a lot of ways. It's complicated. There are myriad things that occur that where you are a victim of your consequences. Calling people a xylophone.
It's very
like that.
complicated, and Trevor, it gets even more complicated whenever you consider where I live, where Bray lives still. Um, I'm certain that we can all agree on what I'm about to say. Um, if I go down the road for 3 miles down the road in the busiest part of town, I'm gonna run into a business run by a racist. There's just no way.
Oh, absolutely.
There's just no possibility that that's not the case.
I, without divulging too much information, have or may work for a business that is absolutely,
owned by a racist. I mean,
it's very difficult to avoid in areas like this.
and it shouldn't be. It just so shouldn't be. We're so over this. Like our generation and my students' generation, we're just all so over it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I really hope we continue that.
Mhm.
But anyway, they're not getting their just desserts. Should
That's a
the
good
law
point.
have anything to do about that?
That's a good point. Well, for me, like, what are the ethics of this? Like, what is the morality of doing such and such a thing about like these racist small business owners and all that sort of thing? Well, what I would say is the ethicality is sheltered within what people themselves vote for. If your local government passes legislation in order to prevent this sort of thing and stop hate crimes, for me, that's where the ethics of it begin and end. My interest is key and centered around the central pole of whatever you get what you deserve. I think these people around you, if they go on like not doing things that are elicit a better socioeconomic condition for their people, you'll end up in a shittier condition than the people around you, like the counties around you, or the parishes, or the other states that implement better solutions. You'll fall further and further and further behind. You'll get exactly what you deserve. And if you do really drastic legislation that leads you down a horrible rabbit hole, like in like Portland or something, if you do that to yourself, that's its own getting what you deserve. I think that's kind of usually the poll that I look at all of this from. It's just the people themselves vote in and allow for a system, and that's the ethic. And within that, I see the ethicality of it. I think it just comes back to getting what you deserve.
There's a lot to be said about getting what you deserve as far as interactions in the social sphere go. And as we've continued to talk, I realize just how broad this topic can get.
Right.
And one thing that encapsulates this entire, or maybe not encapsulates it, but it is an incredibly large part of this that is incredibly current, very, very unique in our time period, is sort of the influence that everyone being connected via the interwebs,
Hmm.
uh, that phenomenon, the effect that has on all of this. Like, you could be a racist 100 years ago, and only you and the people in your town would know about it.
Hmm.
Uh, Nowadays, you say, a racial slur outside of Home Depot, and somebody caught you on camera, and now suddenly
Someone did catch you on
thousands,
camera. You know?
right,
Hmm.
suddenly thousands of people know that you are a racist, and your employer now knows you're a racist,
Yeah.
They
and
deserve
now
to be
your
fired.
university knows you're a racist,
Right. This happened just the other
and
day. This happened just, well, this
that
happens
will
every day.
never go
But
away. Now,
yeah.
I'm not saying that there isn't some sort of justice that should be delivered, and I'm not saying that, I'm not saying anything one way or the other, but I am saying that these are the facts. And on top of that, you were recorded, so that is never going away. There will always, in the public record, be an instance of you having said a racial slur outside of Home Depot on such and such date, even 10 years down the road. It may be the case that you're trying to get hired at some place, and
And they
somebody
find
looks
your
up your
video.
name,
That's
where
right.
somebody doxed you on Twitter or whatever,
You're
where this
very easily
video went
Googleable.
viral, and there you
That's
are,
right.
front page of Google search results, saying a racial slur outside of Home Depot. And that's
Yeah.
something to consider. There was a video that I watched by a person that I really enjoy watching. He goes by Cosmic Skeptic on YouTube, but
Oh
his real
yeah,
name is
Yeah. We all know
Alex.
that guy. Yeah.
It's a side note. It's been really nice to see how popular and how expansive that his content has gotten. But it was a video that I was looking for, but I couldn't find, and it was like an actual, like, solid counter argument to the concept of, and I hate to use this term because it's just such one of those terms, but cancel culture.
Hmm.
But there's a lot to do with this conversation about free speech and things like that, in the avenue of, okay, if we let people say whatever they want and we try to keep the government out of it as little as possible, suddenly the responsibility to legislate, be judge, jury, and executioner falls upon the common people. Suddenly,
but Bray, that's the whole point. It's spread among as many people as possible.
right. And I think there are a lot of instances in which that turns out to be a good thing. Like, okay, if you are a racist, and something, this could be a good lesson for somebody,
Right.
or whatever. But let's consider, somebody's 14, juvenile, stupid.
Juvenile, yeah.
Maybe they were unfortunate as, I was, to have to grow up somewhere where for most of my life I was influenced by people who were probably racist or probably misogynistic or probably hated anybody that had an alphabet letter or whatever, what I'm saying. And that's all they knew, because they're young and stupid and can't think for themselves yet, or haven't been taught to do that properly. And they go off and they do something stupid, like saying a racial slur outside of Home Depot, and it goes viral, and suddenly the whole world, and much can be said about Home Depot versus Lowe's, but we'll leave that for another time. Other hardware department stores are available. And so suddenly this happens, and now they've got this watermark over themselves for probably not the rest of their lives, because we can't really say what's going to change about the internet and content and things like that.
Down the road, people stop caring. But
right.
That is going to follow them for some years.
Yes.
Yeah. It'll pop up with your resume as you
and
submit
so
it.
even if you are learned, educated, whatever word you want to use, by the internet and the people around you, and suddenly, you have genuine remorse, and you're sorry and you do almost everything in your power to make up for this sin, it still exists because nobody is keeping tabs on those who have been damned after the fact. And I'm really not trying to drum up sympathy for people who do stupid shit. I think everybody learns their lesson,
No,
or will eventually have to
these
Well, to
people
follow
can
in on
change
it.
their names and go on with life if they even have to. Like a 14-year-old doing something like this, I just don't believe it would follow them that hard.
Right.
I think they'd be okay in the end.
It's
Yeah, it's
yeah.
just it's one of those things where a lot of the times when you weigh the consequences for something versus a crime, it can seem unfair. But what are we really using as just the common people, as content swipes by our faces online, and we offer an opinion and then swipe away and we never interact with it again, and suddenly that's judgment on somebody's life right there that happened.
So
But
mhm.
that's part of the conversation, I think.
So I'd like to say something about this. So so I kind of have skin in the game on this, like this particular topic that you brought up, forgiveness and guilt and that sort of thing.
We all do.
So we all do.
I thought you were going to say that you've been shopping at Home Depot recently.
I actually have. I wanted like a key copied and they couldn't do it. The machine was broken. I was so upset. Um, I that did happen. I so middle school, middle school. For the listener who doesn't know, I'm from. I was born in a place in North Texas, a place called Frisco, Texas. I when I was there, I mean I can be that specific. It's a big place. Um, when I was growing up there, middle school or so. This is I don't remember the year, but I had been growing up in an environment. Not to name anyone in particular, but I was raised in a place in a time, and I want to be really specific about time. I think this is really important to think about, where um, homosexuality wasn't exactly seen in the way that it is now. Now that was me putting it very softly. And time is so important. We all remember when gay marriage was federally recognized. That whole thing, like we all remember when the White House had a rainbow color on it. It was a formative moment. It was a formative moment for our entire for everything. I was just about to say for our entire country, but I do think it's a formative moment for history. I do think up until that moment, it was so not that moment, but up until something, it was so obvious to me. It was so obvious to me that the gay marriage. I'm speaking as a middle school child. Please understand me. Was not something that should be allowed to happen. It was against God. That sort of thing. That was my conceptualization of it. And then one day, I was sitting there with at the time my closest friend in middle school. I won't name names, but he had turned over to me and it just mentioned passingly that he was gay. I I I didn't know how to encounter him at that moment. It was the most cognitive dissonance I had ever felt. I didn't know how to
And
interact
Trevor,
with him.
as educated as you are now, you know there's no cure for cognitive dissonance.
I was
You
such a
have to
fool.
you have to resolve it.
I have to square the circle. I do.
Yep.
I have
Yep.
to. I have to bring these two things in the conjunction. And not only that, he was also an atheist. And there were very few of those in my middle school. Very few. It was a large middle school, but very
Very
few
few
people.
outspoken.
Very few
And
outspoken.
Right.
Thank
and
you.
so
Thank
Trevor,
you.
I will correct you. I will correct you, and
I
because I
see.
have to. Um, so Richard Dawkins in The God Delusion said something like literally in the first 5 pages of his book that I have taken so hard to heart ever since I read it, because it was like the language I needed to express an idea that I had had for years. There are no such thing as Catholic middle schoolers.
Mm.
There is no such thing as a Muslim middle schooler. There is no such thing as a Baptist middle schooler. There's no such thing. There are children whose parents belong to those religions. And I take it a step further from Richard Dawkins, happily. There are no racist children. Children don't know race. there are children whose parents are racist or
Hmm.
grandparents. Somewhere in their family, somewhere in their village, there's someone giving them these bad ideas.
I see your point. I see your point. So this is one thing. I remember having a conversation a long time ago with a friend of mine. Well, a long time ago, it's like a year ago, about Wahhabi Muslims. This is a common like catch-all term that was used a lot on like news, for example. Talk about like it's another way. It's another catch-all term for like radical Islam. It was a thing for a while, talking about like the Wahhabis doing this or that and their religious sect here and there. And I remember mentioning like Wahhabism to this friend about a year ago, and he had mentioned, well, a Wahhabist doesn't call himself a Wahhabist, or that is to say that he doesn't understand what you mean when you label him as a Wahhabist. As far as he conceives of things, he just conceives of reality as it is. And you're wrong compared to his conceptualization. Like all of the stories, like it's not any one particular thing. It's not any one particular concept. It's just all of the stories that have led up to this one particular moment, the spearhead of an ego leading in a direction. All of the formative moments that led up to that second where he makes this assertion that he isn't a Wahhabi. That's felt experience and without any other reverberation or any other idea. That's just who he is. And if you want to, you can create this scaffolding of ideas that separate others, saying like there is this Christian here and this Muslim there and this Tibetan Buddhist there. When you really want to zero in on it, I'm just me. I live my life and I see reality according to the information that I have. I can create these distinctions between the us and the not us if I want to, and to be honest, I'm quite privy to doing so. I am human, and I.
We
Mhm.
we know the value of abandoning labels at times, Trevor. Like
Mhm.
labels are kind of good, you know, for big things. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But no one likes labels put on them. Everybody thinks that they're special and they don't fit in the labels. You know?
We're all the Messiah. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. We're back to the
Oh
thing.
yeah.
Free episode ship, but yeah. So why did I bring this up? So
Free speech,
that's right. So I had sat there. Well, specifically hate speech,
hate
in the
speech,
direction I
exactly.
was going. So I had this friend who had told me that he was gay, and I had to encounter that in this strange, misshapen 12-year-old mind. Well, misshapen. There's no original sin. That was me, and I wanted to understand at that moment what was uh, what uh, what he was and what my relationship to this abstraction of what he called himself is. It would be just as terrible as someone calling themselves a liberal to my presence, like the age of 12. Like I'd have to do that uh, weird, gross rolling of my eyes and like the immediate announce that you're naive and silly. I don't even know what naive and silly really are. That's just what I was. That's where I was led up to at that moment. That was
No,
the
no, 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 no,
that
no,
was the
Trevor. That was
spearhead
what
of
you
my
were
mind.
pre-programmed. You were
Certainly true.
programmed with that
Certainly true.
response.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I had to encounter that, and I eventually I eventually learned that I had to decide between engaging with this abstraction of what being gay is, and then my friend, this person who I had gotten to know very well, who I would sit and play this video game, Sid Meier Civilization Five. What an addiction! Don't look it up. Don't waste the next 3 years. You're gonna have no time. I had decided I would rather hang out with this friend, or at the very least, as I render judgment, I will continue to hang out with this friend. As strange as that sounds, that was sort of half of my consciousness at the time. I had never committed to anything. It felt like I felt like I just lived every day, and then eventually I looked back at it and went, "Why would I ever for a second abandon my friend? Why would I ever for a second?" And
And
and what's yes.
I just wanted to say there was that you having a moment where you made a decision that it may be more important for you to maintain the friendship in spite of your judgments than to abandon this. That that is such a pivotal moment and maybe overlooked, but so pivotal for so many children across the country that are taught certain things growing
not
up.
across the country.
Well, across the world,
Bible
yes.
Belt.
Well,
That's the Bible Belt. Let's,
and the
Brave
Bible
was going
Belt
to.
wraps around the world.
The whole world,
for sure.
The whole
For sure.
world, certainly.
the religious belt, so to speak. But that moment is so crucial, and I'm glad that you were able to take that step, because once you take that step and spend more time in a situation like that, then that's when those gears of reason begin to crank, and they start
Sure.
going,
So
what was I supposed to be
other
so
than
aghast
that,
about?
yeah. That's right. That's right. So what was I supposed to be worried about? That's right. So so one thing I wanted to mention about this, though, something that's really strange, and again, why I said time, why time is so important about this. Wait 4 years. Just wait 4 years. Then Obama does this thing where the federal government passes this thing, and just like that, the gay marriage question, which should never have been an issue, but it's been answered. Suffice to say, it has been answered. I have to tell you, it's really, I lived through it. I saw it. Everyone changed. Everyone's opinions changed. I don't know if this is how it was in your homes, but it wasn't mine. Not my home, but everyone.
Trevor, try to remember, I was raised in a cult.
Stephen is quite different. Quite different. But to some listeners, I feel like there are some out there that might be attenuated to this. It was really strange how everyone in your middle school and in your high school and your teachers and your family friends and family, I dare say, not I dare say, family. It all flips, and it's no longer disgusting anymore. It's no longer wrong. It's no longer any of these things.
It's like thought provoking. The legislation was thought provoking.
It had hit critical mass. Like an idea had hit critical mass, and then everything changed. Quite literally, everything had changed.
A paradigm
there wasn't
shift,
anything
if you will.
what it was. Well, certainly, and it scares me a little bit, because if I were to follow through on all the ideas in my mind now, and I look back at like the arguments against like gay marriage, for example, are so stupid, are so like untethered to, untenable, untenable, unattended to. Because if you really attend to these ideas, they have a way of resolving themselves, not like that, you know. I had realized how ridiculous all of it is, and I couldn't help but worry, and this is my fear coming up here, that a lot of it, and by it I mean just a lot of our ideas and our ways of conceiving of reality, are a bit like chess pieces on a board sometimes. That is to say, that if I were to tell you right now that you should move the knight from this point to that point on your board, it's not necessarily because the knight ought to always be moved from this piece to that piece. It's because of the rules that have been led up to that circumstance, as well as where the bishop is at this particular second, as well as the presence of that rook over there, and the overall pull or assertion that you want to take the queen, or the king, actually. You want to do these things. And just like that, you create a circumstance where we have this problem, such as gay marriage, and it's resolved in such and such a way. But it's just terminal velocity of particular ideas through time. I think this is my worry over something like angels on the head of a pin, let's say. That's why did I mention that? For a lot of points in history, philosophy, a lot of people were really concerned about what you and I would consider to be completely uninteresting things, such as the joke, quote, how many angels can fit on the head of a pin? And then you could have centuries of argument from the scholastics about this, and Christendom for centuries. Well, people are quite invigorated by these arguments, and they argued about them ad nauseum. It seems to me that they existed in a time where quite literally the bishops and the knights and the rooks were in different pieces and in different locations on the board of thought, and it created a circumstance where that was the right thing to say at that time, based upon those assertions going towards a particular direction that just wasn't ours. And I worry that we're just going in a different direction, you and I, and also Bray, and the listener, the fourth coil, for now. I feel like we're
for now the fourth coil.
Yeah, for now the fourth coil. That was one other way I was thinking. But I feel like the four of us are currently orbiting in a different direction. Our Geist is taking us somewhere else, and that's just where we're going. We're going because we want to go.
So Trevor, you sound like you're getting into the realm of determinism, and you sound like you're getting into the realm of the old ideas of aether, like things are always moving towards where they're supposed to be, but never getting there, and
Well,
so on.
kind of. No, not really.
Well, let me say this so we can run on to some more free speech talk here. It
Yeah, this
sounds
had
to me
nothing to
like well I got where you were going, and I was trying to see where you were going to end up with it, and I think what's relevant in that part of what you were saying is that, and what I think maybe what you were trying to say is that this is another one of those sort of quips that you have about, well, what if what I, believe is wrong, or what if I could be wrong about something, and how easily we're all swayed by some sort of national legislation or something like that, and how easily the dime has turned to a new facet.
Well, let's
And
put it this let's put it this really easy way, Bray. In 5 years, you run the serious risk of looking back and saying, "I was foolish."
right.
You know.
But this is the nature of things, and like you said with the chess game, such a great analogy chess is when we're talking about morality. But I mean, we're all constantly playing a game of chess in which the rules are being changed, and we're all figuring out what's best for how to win the current game that we're playing and things like that. Um, and we're doing the best we can, so to speak. Now, I do want to say something else on this topic before we move to a different category, and that's, I think it was said that, Trevor, you said suddenly it was like all these people were kind of had a different opinion on it, and I will say that that may not necessarily be the case, and we know this to be true, that when things happen, particularly at a national level or a global level, even if possible, or where permitting, this has sort of a ripple or a domino effect on everyone below or within. That's a better word. Gay marriage was one of those, and I would argue that Trump being elected in 2016 was another example of this, in which something happens at such a high level that it affects all of the masses below, and suddenly there are paradigm shifts at the everyday level. So, for example, in 2008, when the marriage equality thing was passed, suddenly a bunch of people who are anti-gay shut up. They talked less about that sort of thing, or their outspokenness
Well,
towards something like that.
because literally as a nation, we said, "Who gives a shit?" You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yet,
That's what it really comes down to.
right.
And so
And yet,
nobody was interested in talking about it anymore. Just like Trevor was saying, no one's interested about talking about angels on the head of a pin anymore.
mhm.
And so like I get his big worry. We're always chasing after something else, and the terms that are excluded from the workplace, the terms that are excluded from school or business or things like that, that's what I was trying to say earlier. Those are just words.
Mhm.
It's the hatred behind them that's unacceptable.
Sure. Which is why, and then that was leading me to, of course, 8 years after that, the nation elected Donald Trump as president, and suddenly the entire Republican Party has changed, and the attitude of people on the streets has either been irrevocably changed, or they have been,
Polarized.
as my, you know, some of my family likes to say, come out of the woodwork, you know. Yeah. And so it's more of like these people are always here. It's just now that they have been represented in some way, and that goes for the LGBTQ community as well as the MAGA community. All that being said, though, I think we had some fairly good trails there. Let's talk about in the avenue of this is business discrimination. This is one that I think may end up going a direction that is a little bit different than what might be expected. This is look no further than the gay couple going to get the cake baked for their
Right.
wedding, and the business
Okay,
owner
yeah.
said, "Nah, not doing that because of my religious convictions. Why else would you be against gay people?" That's my.
This is a tricky one for me, people. This is so
Yeah.
tricky for
It
me.
is.
And
It
I
is.
still do not have a definite answer. But let me tell you something. I err on the side of you're free to do your business.
Mhm.
I err on the side of no one is contractually obligated to do anything with anybody if they don't want to. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Sure.
And so like it's always my knee jerk reaction. It's like, okay, if you went into a place of business and they said, Bray, we do not serve your kind here. Your hair is too
Right.
long. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like
Right.
that
Right. Right.
business.
That'd be putting it kindly.
Well, you get what I'm saying. Like I
Yeah, I
just
know.
picked an arbitrary characteristic about you because, and that's what I'm trying to say is like about this whole meeting is that you know, as a teacher, I make sure to tell my students like to show them proof that like our idea, especially our American ideas of like race and things like that, are just wrong. They're just wrong. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, uh, if if you walk into my business and I say, yeah, you know, long hair just doesn't work for us, you know, you're gonna have to get out.
Mhm.
I mean, really,
I like that
honestly,
Better,
if
go,
it's
better go to
worded.
the state-sponsored cake
yeah.
bakery.
My knee jerk reaction is no. That business should not be obligated whatsoever to do
Mhm.
anything with anyone. They ought to have no business. In other
Right.
words, socially, you know, you should be able to picket out in front of that business and say there are racists in this building. I mean, like, you
Right.
know what I mean?
Right. Right. Right.
Like that's honestly what you should be able to do. You know, as long as it's true, as long as it's not, you know,
Mhm.
slander.
Defamatory. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's not defamatory.
Yeah.
Right.
But you guys get what I'm
So
saying.
I,
Like,
I
you know,
absolutely get what you're saying.
it's
That's
really
right.
tough for me to decide on that one.
Likewise, due to I take the exact same position when I try to answer most questions when it comes to politics, which you can and cannot do legally. We should
Right.
really put in bold and underline that phrase legally, because
Legally.
just being on the border there on that switch
Well,
between illegal
legally,
and illegal behavior.
Trevor,
So
what you're trying to say for the listener, for the benefit of the listener, I believe what
sure.
you're trying to say is that legal is a word that means some burden of proof has to be met. You know?
Well, no, for the following reason. Whenever I think of legal, it really depends on how you approach politics and politicking generally. Because if you want to, you could look at legal as in terms of what you're allowed to do, or you could look at legal as the thing that the government hasn't restricted yet. You could really look at it from either one of those two positions, because there's leverage to look at it from either point. You could look at it from the these are the things that you're permitted to do, and these are the things that you can do, and below that level, or these are things that the state will punish you for doing. It just depends on the way you want to visualize it. But anyway, depending on the way you want to look at it, if I were to draw this line in the dirt here of legality, things you could do without like legal consequences occurring to you, I usually err on the exact same side of caution that you have, Stephen. When you go in and say like, well, I'd rather people, I'd rather err on the side of uh, people doing
Non-contractual
what
obligations.
non-contractual obligations. That's absolutely right, and I take that to a lot of different conclusions that I live with now. For example, I was really confused about. I really had to like argue with myself about what do you call it? This could be another topic in the works. It's a trans issue. What is it called? Like medical. What is it called when people are taking medications, hormones, when they're like
Yeah.
12,
Mhm.
that sort of thing.
Oh, you're
Like
talking
that's
about
sort of it.
like pubescent and prepubescent puberty
Yes.
blockers and stuff like that.
That exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was really confused about. I was really curious, and I was really at odds with myself about how I should feel about that very particular topic. Because, like me personally, I could
That
tell you
is
that
another issue because I have very
yeah,
big feelings about that.
very
Mhm.
deep. We
Yeah.
could, if I'm not careful, if I bring it up right now, we might dive headlong into it and have to
Yeah.
end halfway. I got to be careful. But why did I bring it up? I was really aware of how stupid I was, like I mentioned earlier, when I was 12, and how many horrid mistakes that I had made when I was 12, 13, and 11, and that period of my life. I made so many heinous mistakes. And if you had given me the decision to choose whether or not I could change my gender or my sexual manifestation, whatever it was, into something else, if I wanted to, I could. You just give me that button and I click it. Uh, I feel like me personally looking back, I feel like that would have been bad for me. And I take that and I create a manifest and I abstract that as the unilateral way towards approaching reality, what one ought to do. I think you can see the naivete. At the very least, that's later how I kind of looked at it. Because I want to say that. I want to say that it would be a terrible idea for someone to do something like that. But at the same time, I can't know. I can't know. And just like earlier when we say like you can't hide things from people, you can't illegalize thoughts. I feel like if you were to legalize that sort of thing, people need to see it. People need to see it. I need to see what that looks like. I need to see what it looks like when someone goes out there and makes that sort of decision, for good or worse. I need to see it. You need to see it. We all do. I need to live out that kind of living reality, like a play. It needs to be lived. It needs to be seen. It does, certainly. If it doesn't, it just gets cloistered up inside and repressed. I remember just the other day, my girlfriend had looked over to me and said, "Did you hear this new statistic? The countries that are illegalizing and have the worst, have the most transphobic laws, also have the very highest subscriptions to trans pornography or something." And it's like a real statistic you can pull up. Hilarious, hilarious. You need to see it. You need
religion
to see it.
poisons everything.
Perhaps so. Very, very much so. You need to see it, and I take that realization that I really don't know what I'm talking about, and I really don't know what it's like to be Stephen, let alone Bray or a rice farmer or anyone else. I don't know what it's like to be Tanner. I don't. I never will, and I can't tell you for a second what Tanner ought to be doing with his time. Neither myself, or Stephen, or Bray, or anyone, or any listener who's here, or everyone else. I don't know what to do with you, and I don't know what to do with myself, let alone with you. And just like that, I can't tell, and I can't just specify and say what a business ought to do and what ought not to do. I think I have more than enough right to picket outside their business for refusing service. But at the end of the day, my resolution is the same as Stephen's, or at the very least the same as the assertion you just made.
What about you, Bray?
Yeah, so when it comes to business discrimination, I'm in the same boat as you guys as far as like trying to figure out I like that you said the knee jerk reaction is to want to, or I'm not sure if which you ascribe to the knee jerk reaction, but my knee jerk reaction is that somebody needs to be hit upside the head with a tea kettle if they are discriminating.
Yes.
But I also recognize that a private business should be capable of doing, having its freedoms, so to speak. The issue that I have still with that is that there's a rift between sort of upholding principles and ensuring people's well-being and sort of the however it was described, like the lack of forcing someone to do something. When I think about this stuff, I think about, back in the last century, long before that, but the movement that happened, the civil rights era, and sort of the immense decades and decades and decades long struggle, hundreds of years really, of people trying to eliminate exactly that. And then for me to sit here and go, I think that, a business should be able to put a sign up that says,
it's so tough.
No blacks allowed.
Mm-hmm. Now look. There's one caveat I will make to my own argument. So let's say that a completely private business owned by one or however many people, you know what I mean? As long as it's a closed type of system, you guys get what I'm saying? Like we could put all the owners of the company in one room, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a private company set up in this way, they should be able to say, no, we don't do that, whatever. Okay. Now, my question, of course, immediately is, why didn't they just tell them we don't have time? Like, why did they have to go the extra mile?
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, why? But anyway, a private business should be able to say no for any reason or give no reason. But an incorporated business where you, Trevor, Bray, me, we could all be stockholders. We could all literally go buy stock online in Walmart right now. You know
Right,
what I mean?
publicly traded. That's right.
Yes, exactly. It's a public company. It's publicly traded. That means that there should be heavy regulation on this exact topic. Like,
Right.
can Walmart discriminate against people with long hair? No, not even remotely. People with long hair could be their stockholders. Like, they can't do that. You know,
Yeah, I think it comes back to another episode of we can't convict people of thought crime, but we can convict them for their actions that they take
right,
based on those thoughts. Which is, I think, how the legislation stands today. You know, it's like if you can prove that you were discriminated against based
right.
on something, then there's cause for concern.
That's what I meant earlier by that legal thing about burden of proof. Because like anyone can say anything. You can say
Right, which again,
if they outlaw the word, blue, if I say it in the comfort of my own home, no one
Ooh,
cares. You know
we
what I
can
mean?
talk about this. We really ought to talk about this.
Yeah.
We outlaw the word blue, but we still need a representation of what it is, and we create a new
That's what I
representation.
mean by the idea thing. But
Yes.
just to seal up my point real quick, if they outlaw
Yes.
the word blue, I can say it in my own home, no problem. Just can't say it outside.
Right.
So like I say, it's still difficult. It's still really difficult.
Yeah.
The burden of proof is what I mean by the legal thing.
Right.
You'd have to prove that you were discriminated against.
Yeah, and so this thing about blue, like you mentioned, like illegalizing the word blue. I really want to talk about this because we have a way of running away from words, or at the very least, running away from ideas, and as a way to get away from them, we illegalize words, or at the very least, we make them faux pas, such as the word for being medically retarded. Let's say that's a word that we run away from now. You can't say that in a polite sense. I'm not telling you that it's illegal to.
But my students ask me,
about.
my up and coming 10th graders, Trevor. Every year, I get a group of them that say, "Can we say the word retarded?" And I say, "People,
you just did.
You know the rule." And I tell them, "You know the rule in my classroom. You can curse. You cannot curse at each other. I'm going to live if I hear you say something untoward." And then they ask me that question, and I go, "People, that's scientific literature. That's not a bad word. Like, you know what I mean? As long as the hatred is not behind it. That's what is what I'm getting at."
Well, that's just being.
What's the?
Yeah.
You don't call retarded people retards. You call your friends retards. Oh man.
Hate that.
People say the show couldn't be done today, but I don't know. I'd be there for it. That was The Office for anyone.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It couldn't be redone.
No.
Or that, or Seinfeld, or
I don't know.
Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I feel like these ideas are doing like a bit of a rebound. That is like saying naughty words, or like being in that weird perspective. I don't think we're constantly headed towards that position where things are getting more and more un-okay to say, and like cancel culture and all that. I think like anything else, people eventually get sick of it. And a decade from now, people will look back at us in the same way that you and I look back at the 60s and how strange that time was for its various fiascos that it had. And we in the same way that we look back and talk about how strange the Jimi Hendrix experience was, how much of a trip that was, with a negative connotation this time. But we'll look back and talk about how strange it was when the internet first really took off and the hive consciousness was really starting to complete itself.
I was literally
and all of a sudden there were a lot of naughty ideas.
I was literally about to bring up the idea that you guys realize, of course, in this idea of the free flow and exchange of ideas. That's what free speech really is, people. Dear listener,
Certainly.
It's the free exchange of ideas, the free exchange of human consciousness. And it brings me back to the Charlie Chaplin speech where he goes like, "I don't want to be a dictator anymore. All the time the world's getting more connected and so on." But anyway, we're talking about the flow of ideas. That's really what I wanted to say. Through time.
Well,
and we will one day sit down with people and say, "Oh, I remember when the internet really wasn't that big."
Right. Little blogs. Yeah.
They will talk about the 20s, 100 years from now. and they're not going to be talking about the 1920s. They're going to be talking about the 2020s.
That's
They're
right.
going to learn about that like we learned in
And
school.
And in the same way that we look back and look at the strangeness that was like doing the Charleston and like the racism of that
Mhm.
time period, I think we're going to look back and look at how silly that we were at this time, thinking like after like all the rapists got canceled, like after that whole situation happened, we'll start talking about how strange it was that insert this comedian who said this naughty word at this comedy show got like maltreated for it. That's I
And
think that's a
that brings me up to Arthur Miller,
That's a
the
good
witch hunt
yeah.
idea, the crucible
Oh,
idea.
witch hunt,
You know?
certainly.
Yeah.
I think that's a conversation in the Crucible, and that's a real thing worth happening. Well, real thing worth discussing. So, the thing I brought up earlier about the color blue and like being like medically retarded and that sort of thing, we sort of have a way of running away from ideas. We do. There are certain words that you can't say that didn't have that. Like for example, the unhoused. Do y'all know about this? Have you heard this? In the
You mean
Bay
like the
Area,
term?
yes, like the term, yes.
Yeah.
So in San Francisco Bay Area,
I thought you were referencing some movie called The Unhoused.
no,
You know?
yeah, I'm sure there is one. So you can't. It's no longer. It hasn't quite taken off yet. It's like a plane that's trying to take off, but it's not really. It's a bit like that word Latinx. It's like not really taking off, but it's trying to.
Right.
It's a word that is supposed to replace the word homeless. It's considered to be somewhat socially. To the people, at least the people who say the word unhoused, it's considered to be unkempt to call somebody homeless. You're supposed to call them unhoused.
Just like it's
Yeah.
not supposed to be correct anymore to call people homosexual. Like
Oh,
I
yeah.
had a big conversation about this not all that long ago. It's like people I identify as homosexual. That's
Mhm.
a term. That's a word. Like you can't
Well,
you can't
Right.
demonize that word. It's literally what it means.
Well, as weird as as weird as it is, you certainly can. You certainly can.
Oh yeah,
And
it's big demonized right now.
And the same thing with being homeless. If you look at somebody, and this is another conversation we could have about homelessness because that's something I've had to
Oh my
encounter
God.
very directly in where I live now in the Bay Area, where there's this new word, unhoused, and I can guarantee if we go down this route that we've taken where we run from words, but the problems stay the same. The problems stay the same. Unhoused will have a negative connotation next, followed by another word.
Yes,
It'll be
exactly.
it's a
Right.
rat race. It's a mouse trying to escape out of that bowl of water, and
Yep.
Well,
you give it
and-
new
and I'll-
names. You
I'll
don't
tell
stop
you.
the race. You don't stop the run. You just keep running from it.
If you create a new word or use another word, but it means exactly the same thing as the previous word,
You've solved nothing.
all of the same reasons that you are changing the word will
Mhm.
eventually apply to the new word.
Mhm.
I mean,
If you're
it's just the way that
yes.
it works.
You can't
Yeah.
legislate what people say. Like for example, we all say the word okay. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mhm.
That's not like an ancient English word or some crap like that. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It comes
Yeah,
from this silly thing. Like it was like weird pig Latin almost, where okay came around and.
Mhm.
But anyway, you get my point. You can't legislate any of that. A
You know
top-down
that
approach
certainly.
on words is not going to work.
No, and it never will. And I can't help but remember something. I remember watching just the other day. I was watching a comedy special for this one stand-up comedian. He dated Ariana Grande for a bit. I forget his name. He has like big teeth and tiny eyes. I forget
God.
I forget who
No
it was.
idea.
Yes.
Shit. Somebody in the audience wants to shout it. Comedian. He was on.
Is he
SNL.
short?
Yeah, he was on SNL. I don't know if he was short.
Oh my
or not.
God, it's right there.
SNL host, not host.
I don't
SNL.
know any of them.
Pete Davidson.
Pete Davidson, that's his name. So Pete Davidson, he had a joke that really touched me, and it directly relates to this. He joked that he was at he was going around like house spying, like going around looking at many different houses, and he was going around the apartment. He had like a very this is in New York, so he had like a very like left leaning realtor, and he was going around looking at all the houses, and he saw like the master bedroom in the house, like in this really large apartment. And he was like, and then he gave himself like a weird posh accent. He was like, "Take me to the master bedroom. I want to see it, for I am the master." And he was just doing comedianship. And then he find out later, and she got really quiet. And she was very silent to him, and like the sale didn't work out. And he later discovered it was because, at least conceptually speaking, this is the way that he phrased the joke. I'll start with the way that he phrased the joke, and then I'll tell you what I later found out. He said right after that, because master bedroom comes from the antebellum South, because that's where the master of the house lived, and all this kind of stuff. And I was like treating her like a slave, and that's the joke. Like he felt like he like did a real social faux pas. It's equivalent to like the homeless to unhoused thing. It should be called the large bedroom instead of the master bedroom. That's basically
The
what it is.
large bedroom.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
The primary bedroom,
Yes,
perhaps?
primary. Yes,
Trevor.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And here's
Come
what's
on.
hilarious. Here's
It
what's
would also
hilarious.
be the largest bedroom.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so here's what's really funny,
The
though.
large
I looked it up afterwards. I looked it up afterwards. Complete bullshit. That's not where that came from. It's been around since like the Roman times. That word, the master bedroom. It was.
Well,
way
you know what
before
else
that.
has been around since the Roman times?
Ah, no. Fair enough. This guy's
Today's
got
topic.
No. Look.
it's stuff out there. Yeah, but that's my point, though. Like, it can be really ridiculous sometimes, and this happens, and it happened then, and it happens quite a lot. Just like you can't say somebody's being a total schizo, you know. Well, I mean, that's kind of being mean.
Yeah.
But you do see my point. Like, schizo used to be like a medical term,
Well,
being like
so, Trevor,
yes,
are you trying to imply
sure.
that the people who made the infamous faux pas about the cake were just running away from gay people? Like,
Faux pas about the cake. Well, I might be talking about something else here. Do you mean specifically?
No, I'm talking about the people who wouldn't prepare the wedding cake for the gay couple.
Oh no, that's completely different, and that's legality. That's something
but
completely.
No. Track with me on this one. Like it sounds like those ideas could go hand in hand. Your story from earlier, how you were trying to run away from an idea. The people who didn't prepare the cake, they're running away from an idea. Maybe, brothers and sisters, what we need to do, like I said at the beginning of this, is run towards ideas, especially if they're being stifled. If they're being stifled, you want to look into it. It's really important.
And I'll say this on that topic. It's disheartening, and I know why they do it. I could have hours-long lectures on this, but the hate, I'll be direct, towards the idea that children, or let me rephrase this: the idea that children should not be taught about gay people or any part of the LGBTQ community. The idea that that's somehow grooming children, which is a stupid allegation, or that it's somehow indoctrinating them by simply telling them that these kind of people exist, just like people who are not that way exist.
Sometimes I wish I were a biology teacher. I really do.
Right. The simple fact of things like that, like just, we have a Pride event that's going to be coming up in the city where I live. And, going to read the comments about that and, people saying that it's, it's wicked, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Kids deserve better or blah, blah, blah. It's like, this is not remotely the way that the attitude should be towards something like this. Like, it's a fact. These kind of people exist, and we are better off knowing that they exist, because for example, if Trevor had been to some of these events and been exposed to this kind of information, perhaps he would have had a different experience when his friend told him that he was gay, instead of, suddenly entering this sort of debate in his head whether or not that sort of friendship should continue. Of course it should continue. And it's wrong for anyone.
I disagree with you just a little bit. So I think it could have gone differently in two ways. It could have been easier on Trevor if he was exposed to that knowledge beforehand, or it could have gone much worse. And what I mean by that is, if Trevor were exposed to a group of people, it's so easy to demonize a group. but because it was his friend right by him,
Mm.
because he was his friend, because it was so personal and so shocking, that might have been better. In other words, it really could have gone either way. It could have made it
Sure.
better, or it could have made it worse. It just
Mhm.
depends. It just depends on the circumstance.
But if I can move ahead here a little bit more, if we can try to cover a little bit more stuff here, I want to talk about, and I'm going to lump these next two together because they kind of go together, disinformation and defamation, our thoughts regarding this area of speech. And when I'm talking about disinformation, I'm also including misinformation, which sort of implies a little bit of
Malice.
lack of thereof. Disinformation, I mean to include malice or
Right.
bad intent,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Misinfo could be ignorance on both parties, is what you mean.
Sure. Blatantly false information is what I am talking about, and it is rampant, and it's everywhere. And without getting too much into dead internet, it is just continuing to pollute the online spheres.
Mhm.
I argued way back in 2016 that this is the biggest issue that faces our
It's a big
political endeavors in the country is disinformation and misinformation.
What's that news thing? I keep meaning to look into it, but it's a news thing that like gives you every service's like opinion on it. You know what I'm talking about?
Ground news.
Oh,
Yeah, I
Ground
have it on my
news.
phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not
Pretty
trying to. I'm not trying to plug them too hard, but I really keep meaning to look into that because I know that's the way that I would get back into politics even a little bit, is
That's
looking
pretty
at
useful.
something like that, like ground news. That would weigh all
Apparently,
the
there's
different
this whole
ones.
thing about how like Tesla buyers are leaving and like Elon Musk, his reputation is dipping, but it's only covered by the left. So yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is what I think we should pivot to in talking about. Okay, well, if we don't want to put too many limits on free speech, then do we just let people kind of say and post whatever they want wherever and produce any kind of stuff on a show to the masses? And this again, to reiterate from the beginning of the show, is the issue that I was grappling with at the time of taking that final in the film studies class. This was the hottest issue on my mind. Was I saw myself, not to gloat or anything, but I saw myself as somebody in a position who had exceptional critical thinking skills and could really reason through things and sort of analyze whether or not there was sufficient justification, sufficient data to warrant belief in something. Yeah. And I have no problem saying something like that I feel that I'm well educated. But I felt that I was in a good position. And so I could trust myself insofar as that is valuable or respected, I guess. I felt that I could trust myself to navigate information. Like I tell my mom all the time, I'm like, I don't have antivirus on my computer. I haven't had antivirus on my computer in so many years, and I don't need one because I am simply too good at recognizing bullshit online because I've been doing this my whole life. And I feel the same way now about everything else. Is like
bold statement.
I feel like I can spot. Yeah, here we go. It's like suddenly I disconnect.
That's not something you want to say live.
No. Worse. In a week, he says that it's been like it's been what's the term whenever like all you get is a screen that says pay this money to this address and
ransomware.
Ransomware.
Yeah. Click this, well, that'll come back to haunt me, but what I mean, suffice to say, what I mean is that I feel that I am, I'm fairly well equipped to deal with those sort of challenges that are thrown my way. Am I perfect? No, of course not. But I worry for everybody else because I think about the common person who may not even give two shits about the political issues or whatever. And I'm like, well, can I really rely on millions of that kind of person going to the polls and clicking a button when they're getting fed?
See, Ray, that's why I personally did something about it. I became a teacher.
Well, yeah.
I'm serious. Yeah. It's that important to me.
So here's one thing I'll say about all that. So Bray, I do sympathize with your perspective because I honestly think I share it. for the most part. But one thing I think I have when I worry about that is I think everyone has that perspective. I think everyone looks at it that way. I think that's just the way that
Right.
it's seen. That's the way that people look. I don't need antivirus. I don't need to change my password. I was involved in a data leak this morning. Whatever. This has been the same password since '69, dude. I don't need to.
Right.
You know, like people, everyone has that perspective. And here's what I'll say to it. Here's what I'll say. Bray, you change a lot, and you're privy to a lot of different kinds of environments. And I think there will come times in your life where you will be quite you will feel much like akin to the analogy used at some point earlier in this episode of a mouse like drowning in water and like trying to dig its way out of a bowl. You'll be struggling through some things from time to time. Your life will have its tribulations in it. I'm sure there are quite a few right now, and quite a few that you can remember quite recently. You're going to have situations where you're really, really, really down and under, and it's at those moments when you're really struggling where a crack can open and mistakes, and you can make a mistake. You can make a mistake in any circumstance, but there are environments where you will be privy to mistakes. I've made mistakes. I've made mistakes today. I have. I make mistakes, and I'm going to make them quite often. And I think it's once you take the first take your perspective, specifically the one of like you make like for the most part, or not even for the most part, but I as a person am smart enough to not see the stupid ransomware and see through it. Take that, unilaterally apply it to all of humans, and then insert the extreme trials and tribulations that is life itself and the heinous difficulty that suffering is. And you're going to have situations where misinformation, disinformation can plug its way in. Like, for example, I don't know very much about the current socioeconomic crisis happening right now in like, I don't know, Myanmar, and like this whole thing happening with like the dictators, the military trying to do this thing and the freedom fighters doing this other thing. I don't know very much about it. And I try to
But do
encounter
you know a
it.
Nigerian prince?
I'm afraid not. I see where you're going. What I'm trying to say is I don't know very much about that particular topic, and I'll engage with it in only such a small way, and in such a less unsophisticated way, and in such an unintelligent way, because that's the best way I can encounter it as. Especially if I don't care about it, I'll just touch on it and go. And it's in those exact moments where you can have issues that lead to people being influenced by misinformation. Just like what happened with the Ukraine conflict, with the Ukrainian war, when it kicked off, like really kicked off in like 2022, when it really, when the big invasion happened, you know, when that happened, there was a period of like a month and a half where there was, or at least a week and a half, where a lot of people weren't sure how to feel about it, and it felt as if like this was just some sort of like socio problem. Like it's really more of a civil war. It's really not really Russia's fault. You know, like there was enough misinformation going on, and you and I so don't engage with Ukrainian power politics that we don't really engage with it that much. Just like that, you and I were for a moment. At least I was. I can't speak to, and I can't speak about the listener either. I don't necessarily know how they experienced it, but I so didn't know anything about Ukrainian politics that I engaged with it at that very brief, whatever news articles popped up in my feed level. And it's scary because this really connects to what I was talking about earlier, where it seems like we're just controlled by a geist here and there sometimes. And what do I mean by that? I mean, well, it seems like there's just another geist now sometimes. It feels like I'm just being pushed and swayed by another geist. This is a whole other conversation. But
Sure.
I do feel that everyone does feel that same exact way. And I do feel that eventually
Yeah.
mistakes get made, no matter who you are.
Yeah, and I don't mean to sound like I'm some guru for all the moral issues or something. I'm saying within my means, within the things that I, that are, or to speak scientifically, within the things that can be demonstrated to be true, or by some means demonstrated to be false if possible, I feel like I'm well equipped to deal with those sorts of issues. You know, like if somebody's saying that, we never went to the moon online, it's like, okay, well, I feel well equipped to not be convinced that we, never left the atmosphere, or, or that various.
But the question becomes, what if you weren't? I mean, that really is the heart of the issue. We should all take a step back and say, what if I were not equipped to think about this critically? In other words, what if I was missing out on a lot of my education? And by the way, dear listener, education begins and ends at home. You you can educate yourself so long as you look at a lot of different things and read a lot. I mean, that's just the biggest thing I can tell you. Whether you're listening or literally reading.
Mhm.
But my point is that misinfo or disinfo coming at you, if you're not equipped to deal with it, I mean, it's kind of like we were talking before the episode. Every college freshman believes whatever research paper you put in front of them, and that's the
Right.
problem. The hope that your teachers have is that by the time you're a senior, you can read one and say, well, it seems interesting. I guess
Mhm.
interesting enough to maybe pursue. And that's the
Right.
point. As far as my perspective is for science-based things, but in general, that should be true of all education. Everyone has to go through some kind of English course where they literally talk about vetting information. That's part of your education, and like I said, that's the heart of the issue. What if you weren't equipped to deal with it? Should someone step in? It's tough.
Yeah.
It's really
tough.
tough.
Well, let me say this. We're getting close to wrapping up time here, and so I'm going to go around and let us all kind of say a last little bit on this as usual. There's plenty more to talk about on this subject.
A lot more.
A lot. I would have loved to, maybe talk about, should Alex Jones have been sued for defaming the Sandy Hook situation? False flag, all that.
We could do defamation and cancel culture as a part 2 to this episode.
Yeah, we
sometime.
can always continue. Or other things like, should a comedian or somebody who said something 50 years ago be punished today for something that may have been different back then? Or churches even that have a political agenda and they're. So I watched a thing a few weeks ago where a guy was literally standing at the pulpit and goes, vote for so-and-so, and then he goes, oh wait, forgot I'm actually not allowed to do that, and steps in front of the pulpit and then says the exact same thing to go vote for somebody, which, these churches are tax exempt, and this is another speech issue. But all those for another time, perhaps. So let's go around. I'll start this time and just say that I think that as far as speech issues are concerned, free speech and all that, I think it's clear from our discussions today that these are very sort of malleable topics, and that, like our language itself, sort of our attitudes on this are change over time, and things shift. Excuse me. But I think we have a general idea of where we want to stand in regards to certain types of speech or certain things. There's a little bit of give and take, but yeah, Stephen.
Yeah, so I'll be very brief. My opinions haven't changed a whole lot, and of course, dear listener, you may find the case that our opinions don't really change over the course of 1 hour, and neither should yours. You should, think about what we've said perhaps a little bit, and digest it for a while. I'll leave you with this, brothers and sisters: taste your words before they leave your mouth. Like I said earlier in the episode, I tell my students at the beginning of every year, if I hear you say "damn it," if you break one of my beakers and you say "damn it," I'm going to live. But you may not curse at each other. That's not okay. And I'm not even telling you, dear listener, to never curse at anybody. There are definitely situations where that is warranted. But like I say, taste your words before they leave your mouth.
Cool. Here I can say
Trevor.
something there. Yeah, I'll try to be concise. So I never like to be too certain about anything, because I'm not. But as a general adage, I've always encountered this sort of issue as well. It all begins and ends with my own freedom, and then once we can find a very specific case, you and I can discuss it together as friends, and we can figure this out. But until then, as a general adage, I'll stand with freedom, and I'll stand there with it, because that's the place where I'm free.
Put your specific cases in the comments.
Yeah. Type down below.
Put a 1,000 what ifs in there.
Right.
We'll be overjoyed.
Somebody approach you outside of the Home Depot, let us know in the comments.
Yeah. That's right.
But yeah, so until next time, this has been Four Mortal Coils on free speech. Give us a like, give us a comment, give us a subscribe, click all the buttons, and send it to your grandmother. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace.